You've written about Stalin in the book Koba the Dread, correct? Is there anything worthwhile to compare Stalin and Hitler?
I think it's very interesting, Stalin and Hitler, and many vast differences. But the one that's been fascinating me recently, and I'm sort of writing something about it, is that the impenetrability of Hitler has to do with the fact that he's a sort of sexual void. And sexuality, without knowing any details, is how we recognize each other. It's such a basic human thing. And oddly enough, when a character appears in a novel you're writing, you know exactly all about their sexuality without thinking about it. It's a subconscious sort of apprehension you have about them. Stalin is completely recognizable type. He had 3 legitimate children, at least as many byblows, was a seniorial womanizer and slept with many a colleague's wife. He liked them young. He knocked up a 13-year-old in Siberia in exile and then knocked her up again when she was 14 and got into a bit of trouble with the local gendarmerie. But there's a certain sort of sans-culotte revolutionary Puritanism that emerges later in his life. And in the intra-party phase of the Great Terror in 37, 38, if you were a promiscuous wife or a promiscuous husband, you were much more likely to be shot and beaten during the terror. But with Hitler, there's nothing. There are in fact 3 schools of thought about his sexuality: normality, asexuality, and perversion. Now, I think we can rule out normality, don't you? The idea of Eva Braun huskily enjoying a post-coital cigarette while Hitler towels himself down after a very caring and inventive session in bed. Nah, absolutely impossible. The perversion route, invariably, writers who psychiatrists and psychohistorians and historians themselves come up with the most disgusting things you can possibly imagine. But I think I call him, among many paraphrastic ways of talking about him without actually naming him, I think the petty bourgeois antichrist that he was, as well as being the vegetarian Tyrannosaurus Rex and the virgin Priapus. I think my hunch is that when Eva Braun came, this has only recently been revealed, when she came to visit him at the Berghof in the mountains, he had get an injection from his doctor of bull semen. Now, whether the bull semen worked is completely open question. No one has any idea. But I imagine, I'm not going to be a tease, so I'll tell you what my hunch is that he would fortify his underpants with many layers of napkins and serviettes, and then achieve some sort of state of excitation while, at a safe distance, Eva Braun did something like raise her skirt. And then there would be with skipping the tumescent stage, there would be some sort of soggy climax. That's my sort of novelist's hunch about it. But no, there are huge differences. I mean, Stalin was on ideological rails, and any one of those leaders who stuck to the Marxist idea and the Leninist idea would have more or less had to do what he did. The Great Terror is anomalous, but the collectivization of the peasantry, which involved a terror famine in Ukraine, deliberate famine that killed 8 or 9 million people, with a cruelty that compares with the Holocaust. You have to watch your family starving. And Vasily Grossman wrote a brilliant short novel about this, Everything Flows, where he says, it's horrible to read that some mothers ran away screaming from their children in the second weeks of starvation. Others killed their children and ate them, but others were sweet and tender right to the end and told them stories and tried to keep them. But Hitler, there was no, and Stalin had to do that to break the peasantry. And otherwise you just abandon the socialist experiment and you become a sort of a bourgeois nation, and they weren't going to do that. But there's absolutely no casus belli in Hitler's case. There's no reason why he did what he did, to the huge detriment of the war effort, and for no even vaguely rational goal in mind. Whereas Stalin always had a sort of just about rational goal at every stage.